thing he told me was, I have to write records or somebody cannot realize. Could you put it here? Your space. Yeah.
Thanks.
Right. Like them.
Okay.
Anytime. Thanks, sir. We're not going to that's a very different thing. Two very separate issues.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Everything go good? You have fun? Doing great.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. We're obviously here to talk about Robbie Fabbri's situation. And then after that, I will take questions on the rest of training camp as we get into our last weekend. We'll start out, Robbie, you'd like to make a brief statement?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. These last couple of days have been very difficult and pretty emotional for me and my family after finding out my season was over. I worked really hard with the training staff since the surgery to rehab my knee and be ready for camp. I really felt good and was excited to get out there on the ice with the guys again and feel part of the team. I knew my injury, there was a 3% chance of it happening again, and unfortunately I fell in that 3%. My teammates and coaches and management have been very supportive during this tough time, and I thank them for that. There's nothing I can do now except try and stay positive, be supportive, for the guys for this season, and get ready for next season. I won't be answering any questions until after surgery. I thank you guys again for coming.
Okay, thanks, Robbie. Obviously, as you can tell, it's an emotional time for Robbie, and we wish him nothing but the best as he prepares for the surgery. A little bit of a timeline where we're going to go from now. Dr. Bach, who performed the original surgery, has seen Robbie. He saw him last Monday. Robbie's comfortable that Dr. Bach will perform the second surgery. Dr. Bach's out of Chicago. The timeline for this now is to hopefully have it done within the first couple of weeks of October. Again, it's just preparing the knee for the surgery, so it's not a definite date, but we think we should have that done within the first 2 weeks of October. The timeline for recovery is we're hoping and believe he'll be ready for next training camp. We're not expecting him at all this year, regardless of how deep we go. Make the playoffs, first of all, you got to do that, and then regardless of how deep we go, Robbie's season is complete. A little bit of the history of the injury. Robbie sustained the injury last season. He saw our doctors with the NHL, NHLPA. There's a group of doctors that are both the PA and the league believe are tops in the world. Dr. Bach was on that. Robbie went and saw Dr. Bach, felt very comfortable with him doing the surgery. He had done Landon Ferrero's knee also, I think, earlier in the year. Dr. Bach performed that surgery. Robbie rehabbed here in St. Louis, but would go back up to Chicago at different intervals to make sure that the doctor was happy with the recovery. On July 31st, the doctor cleared Robbie for full participation in ice hockey again. That allowed us then to, Robbie came back to St. Louis immediately, started to train, preparing for training camp. I think in a situation like this, everyone's looking for a villain. Everyone's looking for why it happened. Unfortunately, this is an ice hockey injury. Robbie is in that uncomfortable 3% of players that had a reoccurrence of this injury. As far as training camp went for Robbie, he was scheduled to play on the game on Tuesday, our first game. During practice on Monday, they were doing a 2-on-2 drill. Robbie felt a little discomfort, reported that to the trainers. Then we had a break in that session. Robbie felt good, talked to the trainers, said he wanted to go back out. He went back out and finished that practice. There was a little bit of swelling that evening, so we took Robbie out of that game, wanted to take a look and see what was going on there. The swelling decreased the next day. The range of motion came back to where it was at prior to. So we progressed by allowing Robbie to practice, then play in that Washington game. After the Washington game, Robbie felt fine again. You can't replicate as hard as you want. You can't replicate a game situation in practice. Robbie felt he played 19 minutes and changed that night, felt good, had a little bit of swelling in the knee. As that night progressed, the swelling increased, which got our medical staff's attention. That gets us to Sunday morning. We did an MRI Sunday morning. I got the information at about 11:30 a.m. That our doctors felt they saw the tear or in the ACL. We then took that MRI, sent that to Dr. Bach, put Robbie on a plane on Monday. He went and saw Dr. Bach in Chicago. Dr. Bach confirmed what our medical staff saw, and that was Monday. Then we took Tuesday to get our arms around everything, and Wednesday. And now we're here today. So chronologically, that's how things have transpired from the original injury. Certainly willing and to answer any questions you might have on it and on any part of that.
Doug, you said he felt something in the 2-on-2 drill the Monday before the first preseason game. Was it a specific incident, or was it like a wear injury, and that was just the first time you noticed it?
No, he said he was competing, and he went to put all his weight on that one leg to jump past, and he felt something. He wasn't really sure what it was. Again, I'm not a medical doctor. I hear that scar tissue, sometimes you feel those things as your knee gets into normal situations. He was looked at, the swelling was there. A limited concern, I would say, on the swelling. We took him out of that. We took him out of the game the next night. The swelling decreased and the range of motion came back. So our feeling was it was potentially just the scar tissue.
Have you dealt with other? I'm sure you have ACL injuries throughout your career, where what Robbie was doing, even though he had some pain and discomfort, it was normal to put him back in that soon.
Well, it wasn't that soon.
Well, a few days.
Well, yeah, but I mean, he had been cleared on July 31st. So. Again, I just think it's a hockey injury. I don't think that that he came back to. He didn't come back too early, obviously, because he was cleared in July, and we're talking about the middle to the end of September. So I think, as I said, I don't think if there's a smoking gun or a villain in this situation. Robbie sustained a hockey injury in practice, and we have to move forward. Yeah.
Some guys, this is a situation where it was a progression where it happened. It wasn't a specific time where he re-injured it again. It was from the start of training camp, and it just kind of built up.
Well, I think as he was skating in competition, there's more wear and tear from the leisure skate by yourself to getting into summer hockey with the players, to get into practice, to get into the game. There's obviously a progression on that. And again, I'm going to share with you information I've been told. I'm not a doctor. I think there was no nerve endings basically on that area, because it was obviously a harvested portion for his ACL. So there would be no nerve endings where he could feel anything like you could originally. And so I think there was one incident. We don't know exactly when it was. I'm thinking it might have been that Monday practice. But when the swelling went down, the range of motion came back, and there was no pain, it was felt that it could have just been scar tissue.
Army, you've been around for long enough to obviously know hockey. Injuries are part of the game, but is this one different when you consider he's coming off an ACL injury, now he's going to be forced to miss another season?
Yeah, it's certainly different. As I said, or Robbie, I think, said in his statement, it's a 3% chance of this occurring again, and he's part of that. He's 21 years old. He's going to now miss a year and a half of ice hockey, and what we have to do now is focus on the positive, that he is only 21 years old, that he's going to be the world-renowned doctor is going to perform the surgery. He understands the importance of rehab. He's now been through that part once. He's going to have to go back in, and he's going to have laser focus on preparing for next season.
Doug, have you ever had a player or been around a player that had this happen twice in the same year?
No, this is my first time in the 3%.
Does it change having a second ACL versus the first ACL in terms of the recovery? I mean, should he still be able to make a full recovery and be the same player he was prior to the first injury?
Yes, my understanding is that once he's just going to get the patella tendon harvested from the good knee now to go into the surgery here on the injured knee. But I think that there's a hope of a full recovery. But the reality is, the more surgeries you have, things can go wrong. Again, I'm not a doctor, but what I've been told by our training staff and our doctors is that they expect a full recovery. And then now he's just missed a year and a half of hockey, and we got to go back into NHL.
You mentioned the 3%. After a second one, does that percentage go up? A chance that you might hurt it again?
Well, as I said, I've never heard of a guy doing it the second time, so I've really never heard of a guy doing it the third time. So I'm not really sure what the percentages are of this. We're going in that it was just a hockey injury, and he has to get this done, and we have to work with him, and he has to work his tail off over the next 11 months to be ready. The percentage of happening again, I don't know.
I know it's relatively fresh, but do you think you have enough here to replace Robbie, or are you now forced to look on the outside?
We're exploring all options right now. Really excited about our younger players, what they've accomplished now. But going over the players that we have here on our roster today, we have Blaze and Tage and Costin that have played 0 NHL games, and we have Barbashev and Sundqvist that have played limited NHL games up front, and we have Wallman and Dunn on the back end that have played 0 NHL games. So we're 5 players out, 4 experienced, 1 not as experienced in Sanford. But when I put my vision on July 1st, we've lost a third of our top 9, and also a third of our top 12 with Sanford's injury. So we've sustained some injuries, but that's sport, and we have to find a way to overcome it. We're going to count on these young players, and I don't want to say it's a concern, but it's the next injury that when they start to multiply, it's where's our depth after that. So we're not going to make a bad trade. We're not going to overpay to do something. We're not in a vulnerable situation, but we do have to explore different avenues.
Naturally, Army, the name that comes up for fans is Yager. Is there any interest at all?
He's a great player. Certainly someone that is, we've talked internally about him as a number of players, and we're going to have to really dig deep into how our style of play is and what type of players can come in and complement that style.
I know you said you're not a doctor, the medical details, but you say you harvested so he takes from his healthy knee and then not from a donor?
Yes.
You mentioned when we talked to you last that you could stand maybe 2 or 3 kind of unproven guys on the roster, but maybe not 6 or 7. Are you kind of creeping up towards that?
Yeah, that's why I never like talking to you guys, because you have good memories. No, we're in a situation now where this injury has magnified our situation, and if it was like a Steen or a Bouwmeester, I think we would all take a deeper breath and just let time work as an ally. But when you have players now that aren't coming back till one player December reevaluation, no guarantee he'll be back on December 1st, and then 2 players done for the year, these aren't something that you can just let time work as a friend.
Has anything changed on the Steen and Bouwmeester's timetable? You're still about a week into the season, you're going to reevaluate?
Yes, yeah.
Is it difficult because you could use long-term injury reserve, but Fabbri doesn't make a lot of money, so it doesn't offer you a lot of help in that regard?
Yeah, we had Fabs in our group of 9, and on an entry-level contract to get a veteran player to come in your group of 9, well past the entry level, so the compensation level is different. So we have to get creative with our ability to get us to our opening day roster. There's certain things that we can do to get as close to that, to then put players on LTI, and it's a complicated formula that Ryan Miller in our hockey operations understands completely. He and I talked about it again this morning. So the LTI portion for Berglund is obviously a significant amount, but he'll come back, and then you have to be prepared for that. For Sanford and Robbie, that you know, I don't want to ever minimize to our fans that $900,000 isn't a lot of money, but in pro sports, it's a little bit different than probably in the real walk of life.
So it's not impossible if you saw a veteran that you just had to happen. You're saying you'd have to finesse the cap.
Yes.
I mean, this is unusual for a hockey guy to have a couple, but there are a couple of St. Louis guys with ties. Jeremy Macklin is from here. He's had 3. Bradford had a couple. Would you like, because they all say that the mental aspect of this is the toughest part. Would you like Robbie to connect with somebody who's had to go through this before?
Yeah, and that's what we're going to use the next couple of weeks over. And I had a nice meeting with Robbie today saying the initial shock is going to wear off, and then you're probably going to go through emotions. I haven't had that this surgery, so I don't know the emotions he's going to go through. But we're going to give him the support of talking to as many people he's been through this, and then it's our job to keep him connected to our franchise and our team throughout the year. He and Sanford. You know, when you sustain an injury, the common feeling from a player is they don't want to be a distraction, so they remove themselves from the group. And from a coaching staff, you have to prepare with the players that can help you on that given night. So there's just that natural separation, and it's my job and our organization's job to make sure Robbie and Sanford feel very part of this group.
Robbie had a pretty good idea on Monday and Tuesday what you were looking at with this. Did that alter your plans at all with the changes Wednesday, i.e. either Bennett leaving or Costin getting a longer look? Is that part of that discussion at all?
No. We have to get down. We have to get down to our roster. We believe that our initial meeting to the players was it was going to be a competitive camp, and we were going to reward the players that prepared over the summer and gave us the best opportunity on opening night. And we're down to that roster now, and we move forward. And not all these guys are going to make it either. So tonight's game is very important for some of the players, and that's where we're at.
Robbie,
His potential 20-goal scorer, he had, I guess, 17, maybe beyond that. But this team could use his scoring. I mean, do you feel like whatever you explore, whether it be trade or Yager or whomever, that's out there? I mean, is that possible?
Well, I would say that in a 31-team league, that potential offensive players are usually on a team right now. So it's going to have to be a trade of a player to get that. But I think we're going to have to score by committee. We're going to have, if Blaze makes the team, if Thompson makes the team, if Barbashev makes the team, if Sundqvist makes the team, like some of these guys are going to have to produce offense, and we're going to need offense throughout that lineup. And losing Robbie's offense, losing Berglund's offense for the first part of the year, it's something that we're going to have to deal with and overcome. I guarantee you Minnesota's not feeling bad for us tonight, and Pittsburgh certainly won't feel bad for us next Wednesday. We have to overcome this.
You had some guys last year that were either injured or struggled. Now that their expectations are higher too. A guy like Schwartz, who went almost half the season without scoring, and a guy like Stastny, if he's healthy, those veterans really need to lift their level, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They were going to be required to lead this team, and now they're losing some of the support that they had in that role. We're all hands on deck right now, and there has to be a focus from the players that make this team that collectively they have to pull together and they have to get this done. There's going to be no white knight ride in on the horse and save the season. It's going to have to come from within, and if we can accent that a little bit, we will. But there's not a player out there that's available right now that is an 18 to 20 minute producing player that's available.
I mean, when Robbie scored 20 his rookie year, or right around 20, whatever, it was 1 year out of junior. I mean, do you see any of these young guys you have on the roster right now capable of making a similar impact if given the opportunity?
Well, they've done it in the past at different levels. Blaze did it last year in the American Hockey League. We've seen a progression in Tage Thompson over time. I don't want to put a goal total on a player because them scoring 20 or 25 goals and us being a losing franchise does me no good and does them no good. And them getting 7 goals and us being a winning franchise, everybody wins. So I don't want to put a goal total on these players, but there's an expectation from where they were drafted and what they've done that they're going to get an opportunity to produce at the NHL level.
I wanted to ask about Zach, because it seems like with Berge, with the shoulders, it's almost become a chronic thing. What concern level do you have with this, or do you think he'll be back to 100% too?
I think he'll be back. My understanding on these surgeries is you can play with a brace, and Berge tried that on his first shoulder and never really felt comfortable. It was always in his head. So when he got that surgery done, we saw how well he played coming back from that. I think Sanford, at his age, it was the proper decision to get the surgery, not to try and play with the brace. The likelihood of re-injuring it was greater. When you get that done, you come back to 100%, and it shouldn't affect him.
I mean, not looking for a villain, as you were saying earlier, but just trying to understand the process. When a player goes outside to an outside doctor, how does that process work? I mean, is that doctor in charge of the clearance? Does he work in conjunction with your trainers in terms of getting back on the ice?
Yes, the process is the NHL and the NHLPA get together and come up with a shoulder guy, a knee guy, a wrist guy, a group of players, so the players get a second opinion. We allow the player, obviously, to go to that small grouping, because we have very great confidence in that grouping. And when that player selects who he's going to do the surgery, that's the primary caregiver, and we work through him, and he works through our training staff on when we're allowed to progress to certain things, and they give it the final clearance on the player for return to participation.
Okay, so some people out there who may be saying the Blues perhaps let him back too soon, and I'm not saying that. It's the doctor that performs the surgery that gives the clearance.
Yeah, the doctor will give the final clearance when he's able to go back to full participation.
How do you feel about the 6th and 7th defenseman? Is that kind of fleshing out now?
Yeah, it's going to flush itself out even more tonight. I was in New York I had a meeting, a league meeting on Wednesday, so I only saw the game on tape. It wasn't a great night for the St. Louis Blues, and we're going to need better participation tonight from one of those players. The one player I thought's had a very good camp, not surprisingly, has been Prosser. He plays as advertised. He doesn't go outside of what we want him to do, but he does what we expect him to do very well. Dunn and Wallman, I've seen great things from them, and then we've seen things that are indicative of a younger player, and you can put up with those things, or I don't want to say put up with them. You understand those, and they're easier to accept in Traverse City, easier to accept in an exhibition game, much less easier to accept when we're playing for real points. And so that's the progression that these guys need to make.
I know it's still very early in this process, but was there any part of the rehab process with Robbie over the last year that he thinks he might want to alter with this change here, or is it sort of starting the same process over again?
I would say it's the latter, starting the same process, but I do want to be honest. I haven't, it's an emotional time for Robbie, so I haven't really dug too deep. I was very comfortable with the reports we were getting from his doctor and our trainers that he was working hard, he was doing the proper rehab, and he was every time there was a check station, he was on target. So again, unfortunately I just think Robbie had bad luck. Okay, all right, thanks everybody.